Hey, Peter. I'm gonna leave us off camera for a minute while we get everything kind of situated. I'm gonna get your link put into the fortune cookie. I'm gonna give you a great introduction, and then I'll bring you up to camera. Okay?
Sounds good.
Okay. Cool. Also, I'm going to share with firesiders, and you can also share with the world. If you decide you want to share the show, you'll feel free. Wait bot and a lovely wait bot. I'm going to wait about one more minute, let people pour in a little bit, and then we're going to get started here. Get this guy out of here. All right. Welcome, everybody. We got Frankie J. You're on my list to call, Frankie. All right. We got Amy, Chris, Sonia, and our Peter, our guest of honor. Let's get myself to video. We kind of got to do all of this while it's happening. So it's fun. If you notice in the fortune cookie, the website is Peter's website. You guys go visit the website. It's really got some neat things there, and you'll learn a little bit more about Peter. But we're going to hear his story firsthand tonight. Met Peter through Wendy, and I just decided for Mental Health Awareness Month, what a great guy to come speak. And he's rounding out our month, so he's our caboose. So you are here in the Laughter After Trauma show, and my name is Deanna. I am a speaker, educator, entertainer, and coach, and I like to bring light and lightness to the heavy topic of trauma. I think that everyone at some point in their life has faced situations that tend to be traumatic. I personally am a thriver after intimate partner violence, and that led me on a beautiful journey to find laughter in the healing and laughter in that journey. I believe we're all capable of being self-healers, and we all have that magic in us. If you want to call it magic, I call it magic because I think I'm a fairy. So there's that. And this show here, this podcast, live cast, we don't know what to call this yet because Fireside is so new, but this is the Laughter After Trauma show, where everyday people come on here and show how they've triumphed in the face of trauma. And we provide hope, awareness, connection, and community. And we share the laughter after. So today's guest is Peter Soby, and Peter is a writer, a producer, a motivational speaker. He's an adventurer, and he's a mouth painter. And so you're going to find out some of interesting things about Peter, his story, and how he came to be all of those things. And hey, maybe you might be asking why he paints with his mouth. So, you know. So I'm going to invite you up to camera, Peter, and then we're going to get started with a couple of little icebreaker things that I like to do. Hello, hello.
Great. Hi.
Um, hey. So I like to do this a little bit before we kind of get all the way into the show. I feel like it kind of breaks the ice and it kind of lets people know a little bit about you. I think these this or that questions just kind of let people know, give them a little insight into who is Peter. Okay. So, um, where are you from? Tell us where you're from. If you have a family, what is your careers, your passions, and then we're going to do a little this or that question
Okay,
questionnaire.
great. Well, I was born and raised in the northwest suburbs of Chicago called Carpentersville,
Hmm.
and I lived there for 19 years. And I went to high school in a suburb called Barrington, and then I went to community college in Palatine outside of Chicago. In between my freshman and sophomore year of going to community college is when I dove into a shallow lake and broke my spinal cord and became a quadriplegic. That was back in August of 1987. And
Which we're
at
going
the
to get into some more in your
yeah,
story.
and at the time, as far as family goes, my father passed away when I was 16,
Oh,
and so he was already passed away at that point. But I had a mother and a sister, 3 years older than me.
okay.
And as far as I moved out to Los Angeles, like when I graduated college, and stumbled into the entertainment industry, did a whole lot of producing for a good part of my professional life, and now, in my golden years, I'm living the life of an artist, painting and writing mostly.
Awesome. I love that. All
There's a
right. So
nut-
before, what was that?
oh, that's just a little nutshell for you there.
There you go. That's perfect. And so before we get really like deep into the story, because I know people are going to want to hear kind of all the ins and outs of that. Um, we're going to do this little icebreaker because I always find this a little bit funny and enlightening for me. So it's the this or that question. And I'm going to just do three of them. I pick them randomly. So you're just going to tell us which one you would prefer, this or that. So dogs or cats?
Cats,
Cats. Okay. Music or podcasts?
music.
Music. I love it. And I have a hard time picking between those. I listen to a lot of podcasts, but if I had to choose one, I listen to a lot of music, but if I had to choose one and I had only one choice, it would definitely be music. So I love that. Okay. And then for your reading, do you prefer paper, handheld books, or Audible?
I still, even though they're kind of hard to handle physically, I still love reading a book way
Yeah.
more than listening to it. If I listen to it, I lose track. I'm always rewinding.
I was talking to my sister, one of my sisters, about that, and they said the same thing. They're like, "Nope, I can't pay attention if it's audible." So that's funny. Okay, all right. Well, good. I love that. A lot of times for me, I have everything on Audible because I like to listen to it, like if I'm walking or driving somewhere, and I find that I can kind of focus on it a little bit that way. But I always wind up getting the book as a backup, depending on what kind of book. If it's just a book for fun, I usually just read it. But if it's educational, I usually do both. So
Well, I'm still waiting
overkill, I'm
for
sure.
Audible. They haven't started adapting those adult coloring books yet. I don't know why.
Oh, funny.
There you get a sense of my sense of humor.
Okay. Again, another thing, coloring online or coloring in person, but we know you like to paint, so we're going to get into that. Okay. So let's start. Let's start. You can start wherever you want with your story. I don't know if you had things that went on in your childhood that you would like to reveal. Do you want to start at your accident? Tell us about the journey and some of the things that make you you as you went through life.
Well, I was I had great parents growing up, although I was adopted at birth. I think people always kind of find that interesting. I
Yep,
was
didn't know
born on
that.
December 22nd, and I was a Christmas present for my parents. They got me December 26th. So I was literally
Nice.
4 days old when I was adopted.
Mm,
And so I guess that's an interesting facet of my story because I always had a mild curiosity of who my birth parents were, but I felt it would disrespect my parents so much I never ever thought about seeking them out. But then after I turned 18, my birth mother sought me out through the adoption agency.
oh,
And we got to know each other and we still communicate to this day. And so that wasn't, but I always knew, I never remembered my parents sitting me down and saying, "You were adopted." I just remember always knowing it. So I think that
right.
was kinda cool. It wasn't like I was 10 years old and it was like, "Peter, we need to have a talk with you." And, but, I had a really normal childhood and, my parents were both factory workers. So, we were always kind of scraping the barrel a little bit, but I always had like a little entrepreneurial spirit. I started a paper route when I was 8 and, kept sucking up neighborhoods until I had like 200 newspapers in all these neighborhoods. And, yeah. And then like, I guess as far as like traumatic things, like when I was 16, my father passed away. That was kind of hard to take a little, and,
Was it something that was very sudden and unexpected, or?
he was sick for like a year, but the doctors couldn't figure out quite what was wrong with him.
Mm,
And he eventually went up to the Mayo Clinic in the winter of 1984. And he was up there for about, I think, like a week and a half or so.
mm-hmm.
And it sounded like he was doing pretty good, but they still couldn't get to the bottom of what was wrong with him. But then he died at the Mayo Clinic. And when they did an autopsy, they found out that he had like a really bad, like liver and kidney failure. And he wasn't like a drinker per se. He liked his Miller Lights once in a while, but he wasn't a heavy drinker. But he was a heavy smoker. But it wasn't lung cancer; it was like liver failure that got him. But it was
Well,
weird that
that's
they couldn't
interesting.
detect that for like a whole year that he was sick.
Yeah, that is a little strange. I mean, maybe testing was different, but it seems like in major organs, we should have been able to figure that out, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
that was
interesting.
1984, but yeah, it didn't seem like the hardest thing to figure out. But I felt worse for my mom because they were they met in a factory and they were both like hardcore, even though a lot of our neighborhood was Mexican and you know but they were like hardcore Eisenhower Republicans, and I never understood it. Like as soon as I was like maybe a sophomore in high school, I was like, wait a second, you guys voted for Reagan? It's like what? You know, but so and then I never understood that they were of the party that helped them, not at all. But
Right, right.
so yeah, but I always felt bad for my mom, because her, you know, they were married, since 1955 or something like that.
Okay.
And then like a few years later, I had my accident, and I felt bad again because my mom was just like getting back on her feet and working again. And then I went and had this accident, so she stopped work, and I lived back at home for like I was still living at home, going to community college, but I stayed there for I was in the hospital and rehabs for a year, and then I went back and lived at my mom's home for a year
Yeah.
before I
What led
left.
up to what led up to the accident? Were you doing mischievous things that kids aren't supposed to do, or you just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time? Because I know part of your story is you were kind of swimming in an area that you don't normally swim in or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, there was like a combination of things, to be honest. Like the night of my accident, there was no drugs or alcohol involved whatsoever, but there was hardcore sleep deprivation involved. And part of the sleep deprivation was due to a few nights before that night staying up all night trying LSD, and which was a fun adventure. But I stayed up all night, and at the time, I had my own business as well, so I was really burning the midnight candle, like working from 6 a.m. until 8 p.m. at night and then going out with my friends at night and sleeping for like, 4 hours a night, 6 hours a night sometimes.
Mm,
And on that particular Friday night, I'd worked all week, and on the Tuesday night, stayed up all night on LSD. And, by Thursday night, I was so tired, but I think we had a long work night Thursday night as well. And then Friday night, after work was done around 8 p.m., then I went downtown Chicago and we went gallivanting around the city, came back to the suburbs around 12:30, and I was so tired. There was this lake with a dock in the middle of it, and I'd never swam in a lake ever. But for some reason, I'm like, I just want to go on that dock and fall asleep under the stars. And,
mm,
dove in the lake, and it was just too shallow and broke the spinal cord.
mm. So your friend, you had a friend with you, thank
I
goodness,
did, yeah.
right?
Yeah, I was actually,
Because if you hadn't,
yeah, if he wasn't there, like I would have been a goner. I was there with my friend Ted, and there was a couple of our for girls who were friends, but we were actually, even though I wanted to sleep on the dock, we were going to go skinny dipping. So like I kind of ran down the hill ahead of them three, and stripped off my clothes, dove in, and the next thing I know, I'm kind of like in the water face down, and I don't know if I'm at the bottom of the lake or if I'm floating in the middle of the lake. I just had no concept of where I was anymore. And
mm,
as he's told me the story, my friend Ted, who I grew up with, we've known each other since kindergarten, they got down the hill and they saw me floating. We're kind of like, oh, Peter, dead man's float, ha ha. But then after another minute, it was like, it's really weird. He's not moving because they saw me floating. And so Ted came in and lifted me up by the waist, but dropped me. And my
mm,
head didn't get a chance to get out of the water. And then, but he felt I was limp in that. In the motion of picking me up and dropping me, he felt I was limp and pulled me right back out again. And I was like, don't put me back in. I can't breathe. And he said I was probably underwater for 3 to 4 minutes before he lifted me
oh,
out.
wow.
And I just can't believe, like, not only that I held my breath that whole time, but in all honesty, I mean, I was like, all I could focus on was holding my breath.
Mm,
And, like, when people ask, like, did you pray to God? Like, what do you do in that situation? It's like the last, I'm not trying to be blasphemous to anyone out there, but the last thing on my mind was God. Like, you're
mhm,
just totally, your mind goes into survival mode.
mm,
And so I think like your body just like takes your blood pressure way down or something. And
right.
I just had this dual dialogue in my head. Like after like a minute or so, when it feels like you just can't hold your breath any longer, like I stopped thinking about things like, where am I? Am I at the bottom of the lake? Is anyone going to come find me? What's happening? But then you just start focusing solely on breathing. And it's like all you could think about is breathing. And one voice in my head was like, I need a breath so bad. I think I could just take a quick breath and catch my breath before water comes in. And then the other side of my head was like, no, you cannot take a quick breath because water will come in. But the other side's like, I don't know. I
Mm,
think I could take a quick breath and catch my breath before the water. And the other side's like, no, you can't take a quick breath. And I think really that debate in my head is like what kept me going, like
right.
until I got
That,
pulled
that
out. And it was like, don't put me back in. I can't breathe.
right, right. So tell me what happened after he pulled you out because you had were you in college at the time or had you just graduated? Is it
I
what's the
was.
timing?
I was between freshman and sophomore year in college.
Okay. So tell me like y'all are young.
Yeah,
So how did he respond after that? And I'm guessing like maybe not a cell phone era either, right? Like this is not an
so,
era where everybody just had a cell phone where you could just be like call 911. I'm guessing you were in the late 80s here.
yeah, it was 1987. So
Mhm.
actually, one thing I remember so is after I told him don't put me back in, he pulled me to the shore, and I remember there was a bunch of rocks on the shore, and then the two girls were, and of course I'm naked at the time, and I just remember one of the girls saying like, "Cover him up," and I seem to remember saying like you're worried about my penis, go call the cops or go call the ambulance. And they ran up the hill to the houses, and Ted was there with me. And then I don't remember a lot, but then I remember hearing sirens, and then I
Mm-hmm.
remember police. I remember a female police officer poking me with their badge to see where I could feel. And then I
Mm.
remember them trying to get me on the stretcher, but it was hard because of all the rocks underneath me. And then I remember someone saying he's going into shock, and that's kind of like the last thing I remember.
Mm.
And the next 2 weeks are like totally fuzzy,
Yeah.
you know, like of being in the emergency room, and then they helicoptered me to a different hospital. And
Okay, and so you were in hospitals in Chicago. So once you got moved to probably some type of trauma facility, like right that treats acute trauma
exactly,
like this. So once you got to a place like that, what was the process after that? Because that's probably a long process as far as recovery was concerned.
it was, yeah. Like I went to the local hospital, then they helicoptered me into Chicago, where they were, you know, specialized in spinal cord injuries and such. And so they fused my spinal cord together by taking a piece of a, a chip from my bone and wiring it to my neck to like stabilize my neck.
Mm,
And then they put me in a thing called a halo brace, which kind of like is a metal ring around your head, and they screw it into your skull, and it's attached to brackets and then like a hard plastic vest.
mm-hmm. I had a
So
cousin in one of those.
yeah, they're crazy. They're definitely crazy. I know there's a picture on my website of me in my halo brace.
Mm,
But for those first couple months, like I couldn't move at all. And they said, even though I broke my spinal cord between the C5 and 6 vertebrae, which should give you some arm function, in the
mm-hmm.
first few months of the injury, it's so swollen that I couldn't even move my arms or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't know how much I would recover or not until the swelling went down. But it was an
Yeah.
arduous process because at the first hospital, they weren't, and you don't know your own self care at that point in time. Like they had me on a bed that turned you back and forth called a striker bed, I believe, so you
Mm,
don't get bed sores. But somehow the halo brace vest was digging into my back. And when I got released to go to rehab, like after 6 weeks, I was so happy. But then rehab got me and said, "You've got a huge sore on your back, and we're sending
oh,
you back to the hospital." It was so devastating. And basically, some people are in and out of hospital and rehab in 3 to 6 months, but it took me 9 months before I finally got released from rehab. And at that point, they said, you would have to use a power chair, because I did start getting used to my left hand and wrist a little bit, but my right arm was still pretty dead. But
mm,
I was just so insistent to use a manual wheelchair with like pegs on the rims that I could push with my wrists. And
okay, gotcha.
and they were just like, "Your life will be so much easier in a power chair." I'm like, they're like, "Because we'll sit you in a manual chair, but you're gonna push in circles because your left arm is stronger than your right." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I know this sounds corny, but I was like, look, I just pushed an inch today, a foot tomorrow, right? And I
Okay,
never,
well,
I never did get in that power chair ever. So
and you're still not in it, right?
no, no. And now I'm so
Right.
glad it didn't, because it gave me so much strength pushing my whole life.
Yeah. And this is something I think this is a good point, a good power point to bring out is that you made the hard choice, but the right choice. In other words, they were trying to tell you to take it easy on yourself, and you said no, no, because 1 inch today and 1 foot tomorrow and
Yeah,
then a mile. So, and that to me is a mindset. And I think that that's one of the things that when I look at people, all the people that I interview or whatever, and we talk about the things that they've overcome, one of the things is really that mindset of saying, nope, this is how it's going to be, and this is what I'm going to do. and you make that determination. And I feel like if you're determined to do something, then that's exactly what's going to happen. Who was it that Ford, was it Ford? Maybe that says if you say you can or say you can't, neither one is true.
I don't
Either
know
way you
who,
look
but
at it.
that's a great saying. Yeah.
I think I think it was Ford, Henry, the car,
Right.
the Ford. Yeah. But anyway, whichever way you say it, it's true, right? We everything we see anywhere is somebody's thought. you know, the light rings, the devices, all the things. They're somebody's thoughts that they thought into reality. And I think that our mindset is such a powerful, powerful thing, and we don't use it as much as we should. But I find in these situations, you're forced to determine to get that determination, and it's kind of like a do or die situation, and you decided to do. And so I
Yeah.
think that's a good point to bring out. I love that. So you determine, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to be in the manual wheelchair and I'm going to figure it out. And still to today, you one arm is stronger than the other. Like you have very little use of your right arm, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. It's basically like my balancing ballast. Like I
Okay.
just got to keep my right arm behind the hook of the armchair just so I don't fall forward.
Mm, okay. I got you. So how do you roll forward in your wheelchair with just the left hand?
Well, the right arm, like, my left hand, I can't use the fingers, but I could use the wrist, which gives me this ability. And
Mm-hmm.
that's like my saving grace. That's like how I eat, how I brush my teeth, how I shave. But like the right arm, I could move it, but I can't do nothing with the hand or the wrist. But because I've got a palm, I and I've got the right arm strong enough that I can push with both sides evenly now.
I love it. I love it. So you did what you had to do. I love
Yeah.
that.
And I do
S-
admit 3 years ago I did get power rims, which are these awesome rims with like Segway technology where you give the rims a push and they propel you further. And that's like opened
Oh,
up my world incredibly. So I still get to use my muscles and push, but now I could push up hills, I could push through grass, push up ramps that were all very difficult before.
I love that. I love that. I didn't know there was such a thing. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I
it's
got to keep
definitely
that in
one of the
mind for.
best inventions for someone like me ever.
I love it. All
And
right.
one
So
little amendment I should add to my that beginning journey of being injured that I think is important in the context of our conversation is that when I was like about a month into it and I was just laying on that striker bed going back and forth without being able to move, and you go from a life of activity to a life of laying in a bed 24 hours a day not being able to move. Like one night I just had this, I don't know what brought it on, but I had a conversation with myself, and maybe like that dual dialogue in the head, maybe I got two people inside me, but because I do have a business mind and a creative mind, so I probably do have two people in me. But um, I had a conversation with myself that said, Peter, make yourself a promise right now, tonight, and keep this promise that you're never going to look back and be depressed. You're never going to look back and be angry. And you're not going to keep looking back and saying, what if? You're always going to look forward.
oh, I
Promise
love that.
yourself. And like I was like, okay. But I never forget that conversation I had with myself. That was just like always look forward, always look forward. Like there's nothing to be angry about, there's nothing to be depressed about. There's bad days, yes, but I'm not going to look back and be like, why did I do that? Why? It's like none of that. Like I threw all of that away that night, and that's like been my mantra ever since that night.
Uh, yeah, clap it up. I love that because honestly, when it was something I was going to ask you about actually, so I'm glad you brought it up because look, we all have things, maybe not as drastic as yours, but we have things that happen, and we can give in to those things, or we can choose to, like you said, to not to move forward. And it's okay. I mean, every now and then we have a bad moment. That's what I like to say, like bad moments, not bad days, not bad weeks, not bad months, not bad years. So much time could be wasted there. It's not saying that you don't get to process what you're going through, but what it is saying is you make that determination, like you said, that you're not going to what if yourself, but that you're always going to just move forward. So I love that. So how did this play out, for you? Because part of what I was going to ask was about that emotion, and you made this also determination, which I think is incredible. And you do. I like that you have, because now twice you've said that you have these two people that you talk to each other in your head. We all have a narrative we're playing, right? But you were talking to yourself when your face was in the water, and then you talk to yourself just now, like you said, those two sides, and saying, you can live in the regret or you can live in the now and appreciate that. So how did that play out for you by making that determination? Because that had to be something, okay, like this had to impact your family, and having that determination had to be something that was helpful when it came to how your family was able to help you and to help your recovery. So talk about that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I learned so much from my mother because she was, the most stubborn person ever in the history of the world, and I say that in a good way. But she was, like really old school. She was the type of mom that I remember. I don't remember how old I was, maybe 12 or 13, and we were having an argument about something, and I was like, if you would just shut up a minute, and so I could. It's like she didn't talk to me for like 6 days after that.
Ooh.
Like my mother was the kind, like when she got mad at you, it would be the silent treatment for like 2 or 3 days.
Mm.
It's like you're living in the same house, your mom will not talk to you. It was maddening.
Hmm.
But on the flip side, she was like the strongest. Her story is, I won't go into the whole story, but basically, when she was 18 years old, she had five younger siblings, ages 12 to 6 months old. Like 12, like 9, 7, 5, 4, and 6 months old. Both of her parents died. This is like back in 1935 or something, or
Oh
1940 maybe
no.
or something, or 42 or so. But anyway, both her parents died, and she has five younger siblings. She was 18. They all get sent to foster homes. She goes out and gets a factory job and saves all her money so that when she turns 21, she can get them all out of foster care and raises her five siblings like her own kids after that. Talk
Wow,
about
that is
power
incredible.
women. But she lived a life of strength and sacrifice, and then when they were all out of the house, she adopted my sister and then they adopted me. They couldn't have kids for some reason themselves, but she was a strong, strong woman her whole life. And, I
Mm.
think being observant of that strength my whole life, rubbed off on me. And when I was released from the hospital and rehab and I lived with her for a year, God bless her. She like wanted to try and help as much as she could. But I'll never forget that she always said this to me. Like after I left and we'd have conversation, she's like, what the hardest thing for me while you were here that year was? I was like, no, what? And she's like, was watching you struggle. She's like, because you would be trying to like figure out how to eat by yourself or do something by yourself. And she's sitting right there and wanted to help me so bad. But she knew if she kept swooping in to help me, I would never learn to do anything or I would not become as independent as I could. And there was like an understanding. It wasn't like I was sitting there struggling to do stuff like, God, Ma, can you help me? Like she knew I wanted to figure it out. So it was like an unspoken thing. But of course, for her as a mother, that was so hard for her to like sit there watching me struggle
Yeah, I can't.
and just letting me do it. And like, I am so grateful to her from the bottom of my heart for that, because I knew so many other people that were of my injury that their families just swooped in and did everything for them. And they just were very not independent whatsoever, you know?
Right. And I think, so with that, was that part of what gave you the impetus to say, hey, after about a year there, you said you were with her for about a year after the accident. Um, you moved out on your own. So tell us your journey from there. So, because obviously you became independent and you're not in Chicago anymore.
Right. Yeah. So that year, I finished my sophomore year at the community college, which was a lot. Like, I went back to like a full time schedule at community college. And I was also very active in extracurricular there. But anyway, then I got scholarships to go to University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. And I always wanted to go to a small liberal arts college. I hated big colleges, but I got a full scholarship, and they had like a great like disability campus, including this place called the Beckwith Center, which was a dorm with half disabled people and half able-bodied people. And the able-bodied people got their room and board paid for by helping the disabled people.
I
So I was
love
able to
it.
take the leap from living at home. I drove down to school and immediately just started living this place where, I need help. Even to this day of my life, I still need help in the mornings and at night getting in and out of bed and with showering and dressing and everything. But going down there, that was my first taste of like living by myself. Is I lived a semester at Beckwith, and then after a semester, I was like, okay, I can do this, but in not such a regulated setting. And a couple of the people that I got along with really great there, the able-bodied people, we all got an apartment together. And because of government, like, they have assistance for your caregivers.
Mhm.
They were basically able to get their apartment paid for by helping me. And so the last year and a half
That's
of
great.
college, I lived in an apartment with people that were able to help me. And, that gave me a big taste of living on my own. And then when I graduated college, I packed my van to move to LA, and everyone was like, "Oh, he's not going to do it," but I did it. And this was, I moved out here in August of '91, so there was no. There might have been an internet, but I don't think there was back then. Maybe it was,
Not much.
I think it
Yeah.
was still like those DDB chat rooms and stuff like that. But anyway, I had to like
Right.
when I drove to California, I had to have people ready to help me, and so I did all my interviewing over the phone. And in hindsight, it's like I don't even know how it worked, like without the internet.
I know we're so used to having everything at our fingertips now, and it's interesting how that even, yeah, you wonder.
And not only that, but it's kind of like, driving across the country to start like a whole new life somewhere. Now it's like, at my ripe age of 54, it's like even the thought of going on a vacation somewhere for like 5 days is like, oh, I'm going to be so out of my comfort zone. And, the hotel's got to be just right. Like, I don't even want to travel. It's like I can't imagine. Like, if someone told me now I'd have to like drive across the country and start a new life, I would be like, that's impossible. But when you're young, nothing is impossible.
So what was it like getting driving? Because that's a challenge too, right?
Yeah, yeah, because I basically drove a cargo van with a lift. So it's like a platform that raises you to the van. And then I roll the wheelchair right into the driver's area. And there's like a three-prong thing, the steering wheel that I steer with my left hand, and like a lever on the right side with three prongs that you pull for gas and push for brake. And when I first started driving, my right arm was my weak arm, and I could barely brake the van. Like, it would be so hard for me to push the brakes all the way. And, but I went to this place in Indiana that you spend a week kind of learning to drive. And then, I had a van made back then. But at first, I couldn't drive alone. I needed someone to help me push the brake. And then,
Oh my goodness. That was it like a dual control? So like somebody sitting in the other seat, or
no,
they
I would
just
just
used the
say, like,
handbrake?
no, they would just, it was a lever between the driver and passenger seat, kind of. So I
Oh,
would be
okay.
like, hey, push on it right there. Okay. And I could push it pretty good, but just not all the way. And I remember, before I went down to Urbana-Champaign, I was just driving on a permit, so I had to take a driving test. And I was so nervous because I knew I could brake sometimes, that there's other times it was hard. And when my driving instructor got in the car with me, it was an older woman, and she started it by saying, let me just tell you, I think it's amazing what you're doing, and it's so inspiring. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, I got her in my palm. So, like, I'm going to use my charm to pass this driving test. And I just like charmed the heck out of her as I rolled through a couple of stop signs because I couldn't stop all the way.
Oh my
And
gosh.
she was, no, she passed me. And even when I drove down to college, there was a friend driving with me that helped me brake. And the first semester of college at Beckwith, I still could not, didn't feel confident in my strength to brake alone. But then one night, it was about a 4 hour drive to where I grew up to college. I was
Mhm.
like, I am so sick of not driving by myself that it was like in the afternoon, like maybe 5 o'clock. I was like, you know what? I'm going to drive home and surprise my mom alone. And
Mm.
I, I'm going to have to brake this van. Like, I'm going to have to push the brake all the way to make this drive. And so I got in my car. And from that day on, I never needed help. I realized it was a psychological thing. I was able to brake the car at that one
Mm.
time, but I just, I
Love it.
couldn't wean myself from that safety backup. But once I challenged myself to a 4 hour drive with nobody, then it was like, easy.
Okay, cool. So, but then you flew out to LA when you moved to LA.
No, I drove.
Did you have a new car? Oh, so you drove all the way out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had,
Did you drive across the entire country by
well,
yourself?
actually, I had a friend in Urbana-Champaign that also wanted to move to LA. So he drove his car
Mm.
behind me. So
Okay.
I did drive the whole distance by myself, but my friend was in a car behind me, and I was hauling a
Yeah.
U-Haul trailer, and that van was so
Oh my
heavy.
goodness.
Like going across some of those like Arizona mountainous roads with the winds, like,
Hmm.
you know, I I was like holding on to that steering wheel for my dear life.
Wow. Okay. All right. So far we got you now moving across the country by yourself, breaking on your own and doing it, right?
Yeah.
You did exactly what you said you were going to do. And then you get to California. How did you know what you wanted to do when you got there? Was it what you majored in college? I mean, I know some of it was art, but you wound up producing. So,
Yeah, like, I mean, actually, I had nothing. My life was nothing to do with art in the early days. Like,
mm,
my aspirations were to be a DJ, like, or my aspirations when I was young was to be a baseball player, a disc jockey, or a chef.
mm,
And I disc jockeyed in college before my accident and after my accident. And I was a disc jockey for like parties and weddings and dances before my accident and after my accident. And I kept doing it when I got to California. And but my major in college was speech communications with a concentration in publicity and promotions.
mm,
And I thought
okay.
it would be interesting to work with movies and coming up with like the poster ideas. And I didn't know what that was, but I was like, I want to come up with like the poster ideas and how they market the movies.
I love that. Yeah.
And basically, this girl I knew in Urbana-Champaign, her mother lived in Southern California,
Hmm.
and um, she said that her mother had this list of production companies, and like the whole senior year of college, I was like, you got to get me that list. It's like before the internet. It's like you
Mm.
got to get your aunt to mail you that list, and she finally did. So when I drove out, I did have this like six pieces of paper stapled together with like film production companies.
Wow.
And after I got settled in after a couple of weeks, I just started going through them, calling them like, hi, do you got any job openings? And like about
Ah.
the sixth company I called or so was this company called Largo Entertainment, which was Larry Gordon on the 20th Century Fox lot. And they had just produced Point Break, the Keanu Reeves movie.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the people were like, oh, you got to send us a resume or whatever. But she was like, we do have an internship available. Like it's a 1 day a week. And she's like, I'd love that you just like, had the gumption to call out of the blue. And she's like, why don't you come in and interview for it? So here I am, a few weeks into living in California. I'm driving on a 20th Century Fox lot. And I get to the building and there's like a couple of steps. But there were some security guys there and they helped me up the steps. And then I did notice when I parked by the building, there was a convertible red Mustang parked out there.
Mm.
Or I don't know if it was red, it was a convertible Mustang. But anyway, so I get in the building, it's heavily carpeted, and I'm pushing really slow. All of a sudden, someone behind me, like, he's like, here, I'll give you a push. And he pushed me down the hallway, and I turn around, and it's Kevin Costner.
Shut
And
up.
there was this Bull Durham, it was this Bull Durham Mustang out there. I
Oh
was like,
my gosh.
thanks, Kevin Costner. And so then they interviewed me and they're like, well, the internship is in the story department, which is like scripts. And
Mm-hmm.
you would have to do stuff like filing coverage of scripts and Xeroxing scripts. I'm like, physically I can't really file or Xerox. But
Mm.
they're like, we really like you. Just why don't you take it and we'll find things for you to do. I was like, okay, great. So I came in for like my first 1 day a week, and yeah, they found little things for me to do, and but I thought it was so cool. The script department's like where people send in scripts and they have readers that read them and say it's good or bad and pass them
Oh.
along. I was like, this is really interesting. But then a few months into my internship, someone from the finance department in a different building came over, and she's like, she was friends with the story editor that I was interning with, and she's like, I got to hire an assistant, and I hate going through, the variety want ads. And she was like, do you have any experience in finance? Like, oh no, I suck at math. Like, and she's like, well, do you know Lotus 123 on the computer? I'm like, I don't, but I can learn really fast. And she's like, well, why don't you just come down and interview for the job? I was like, okay. And so I interviewed with
No,
like,
I don't know anything about it, but come on an interview.
well, see, I do admit, like, I think I'm probably underselling myself because I did have, even though I was very naive, I think I was able to charm people well,
Mm-hmm.
which is how I think I got the internship, and how she was like, but you seem like you would be good, like, so interview. So I did, and they gave me the job. And so after a month, I had a full time job, my own little tiny corner office on this 20th Century Fox lot, and yeah, and so basically, not to make the story too long, after I was there a while, the guy who was the assistant to Larry Gordon, like, sat
Mm-hmm.
down with me at lunch and we were talking. He's like, so what are some of your favorite movies? I'm like, oh, well, my favorite movie all the time is Field of Dreams, without a doubt. And
Yeah.
I told him the story of how I met Kevin Costner there. And he's like, okay, now you're just trying to be a brown nose. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, you're working at Largo Entertainment, Larry Gordon. He's like, Larry Gordon produced Field of Dreams. I was like, what? I'm
Ah.
working for the guy that produced Field of Dreams? I was like, I was floored. I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is kismet. I can't believe it. I landed in the right place. And a few days later in my office, there was like a beautifully glass framed poster of Field of Dreams as a gift
Oh,
from.
wow.
So,
Nice.
But anyway, after about a year, I realized that the script department is where I wanted to be, not the finance department. And I started reading every script I can get my hands on. And I started doing coverage for other companies, which was kind of like a no no, but it's what I wanted to do. And one of the companies that I was freelance reading for, well, one of the producers started his own company and asked me if I wanted to come aboard as their story editor. And I jumped at the chance. And then I was there for 3 years and became, director of development. And after 3 years there, I felt like I was packaging these scripts with actors and directors, and they were not getting anything made. And I was like, man, if I was doing this by myself, I could do it. And so I quit and took some of my projects with me. And within 6 months, I was producing my first film.
Awesome.
And I've
So, can you tell us
the
some of the films? What are some films you
the
produced?
first film I produced was a based on movie of a cult classic horror film called Carnival of Souls.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, I actually still own the rights to that original 1962 film. And
Oh,
we've since I've we remastered it with the American Motion Pictures of Arts and Sciences for the Criterion Collection, and they released it on DVD and Blu-ray, and now it's streaming on HBO Max and Shudder. So it's kind of
oh,
been like
cool.
a nice little cash cow throughout all these years, but
That's
it's
awesome.
also nice to be like the person that's kept this incredible cult film in the public vernacular for all these years as well. But I'm actually getting ready to shop the true remake rights around. So, and outside of that, I did like all my independent films are like really cheesy, straight to DVD stuff. Like we did one called Tail Sting that came out 4 years before Snakes on a Plane about giant scorpions on a plane.
Oh, goodness.
And it was a lot of stuff, like a lot of like African American comedies that went straight to DVD. But
Yeah.
then in the aughts, like my artistic side started to come out more. I started producing a lot of theater. And then I started doing a lot of music videos. And in fact, I got a contract with this company from London called All Around the World. They were an electronic music label, and I was contracted to do all their music videos in LA. And I probably did about 30, 40 of them more toward the end of the aughts. Like it was just back to back to back, and it was great money, but I did work myself into the ground doing that
Yeah.
job.
Yeah. And then you bring yourself right here to current time where you're not necessarily into the production anymore. You're just more about doing your artwork because that's what's on your website, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because like
Yeah.
after the music videos, it basically what happened is I developed a tailbone wound. I mean, this is like another like big chapter of life, and
Okay.
Christopher Reeve died of a tailbone wound because it got infected in the bones, and he died of
Oh.
pneumonia from that infection. So
Oh.
I knew that I was getting a tailbone wound, and I just kept working and working and working, thinking it would magically go away, but it didn't. And one day it got so bad they took me in. They're like, "We got to take an X-ray because if your tailbone's infected, you're in big trouble." And it was. So they
Yeah.
did emergency surgery, moved the tailbone, but it literally took me. They said you have to stay off your butt to heal
Mm.
this. They basically took a scoop of flesh out of my butt, and they
Yeah.
said it should take 3 to 6 months in bed if you're dedicated to heal this. Well, you
Wow.
know how many months it ended up taking laying on my side
Nine.
in bed to heal it?
How many?
16 months.
16.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's like, of course, I lost my music video contract. I had to drop out of a lot of my film projects, and, you know, but I was adamant that it would heal all the way because I didn't want to be a ghost chasing me all my life.
Right.
So I
Right.
healed it all the way. But I had to kind of reinvent myself, and I started, making short films and doing some social media videos. And by the time 2015ish rolled around, I was just tired of physically producing and just was like, I just want to. I'd always written screenplays, but like back when I was doing straight to DVD, but I was like, I'm just going to write the screenplays I want to write now. And I got
Mm.
into the MFPA, the Mouth and Feet Painting Artists
Mm.
Association. I'm going to paint
Okay.
and write. And that's how I've been making my living ever since.
I love it. And I think that I don't know anything about this new metaverse and NFTs. But when I look at your artwork, I feel like there may be a market there for that, you know? Um, isn't that something that you can do because you have unique individual pieces, and because you can make stories around it and everything, I think there's a whole lot of packaging you can do with your artwork.
Yeah, I
So,
totally agree. And I've been approached by a couple different people to create the Peter Soby NFT property, and
yeah.
I'm all for it. We are, or I should say, I'm taking a little bit of a step back because like NFTs, just the whole blockchain had a big stumble recently. But I think
Mhm.
hopefully later this year the blockchain will pick up again, and I kind of don't want to try to get NFTs out there when blockchain's at an all-time low.
Yeah, so I don't know enough about it. And hey guys, if you I know a lot of people are probably with Stephanie, but Amy and Chris are still here. If you guys want to come up on stage, you're more than welcome to come up, talk, chat, ask questions. Um, but while we're waiting to see if they can, because I don't know, Amy is my sister, and I know she was in the middle of doing something. They're building a house, so it's really exciting.
Wow,
Um,
congratulations, Amy.
and Chris, I don't know what Chris is doing. I never know. But the NFT thing, I listened to something about this not too long ago where they described it as packaging it all together with having, like, he's doing his packaging in layers. And he has music and artwork and video, and then he does it in layers. Like the first version might be an acoustic version of what he's playing with the graphics and the artwork, and then the next level, so that people can buy in at a lower price. And then I don't know enough about it to know, so I don't really know what it all means. So and it's so like outer space to me that I don't really
Yeah,
understand it. But before we totally wrap up, and you guys feel free, like, don't I'm not going to invite you, so you'll have to invite yourself. But we'd love to hear from you. um, but one of the things that I'd love to do as we're wrapping up the end of a story is to really just talk about maybe 2 3 points that you felt like were sticking points in your life, either turning points or determinations or things that got you through the traumas that you've experienced, so that you kept going, kept moving forward, and maybe found your laughter, right?
right. Yeah, I mean, not to sound like a broken record, but I would definitely say that the story I told about the conversation with myself one night was a definite turning point. Like, I mean, I've never ever forgotten that.
Hmm.
That the promise I made myself to always look forward. And I think it kind of ties into what you said earlier, even about the Henry Ford quote. It's like
Hmm.
you could either choose positive words to believe and live by or negative words to believe and live by. And luckily, I chose those positive words. And, even on dark days or nights when everything seems to physically be going wrong or something like that, I just hammer it into my head that remember, this is just a blip. Like, I'm so curious where I'm going to be in 5 years. And, so nothing is going to stop me at any given point in the timeline to discover who I am in 5 years. So like I'm as curious now where I'm going to be in 5 years as I was when I was 19.
Yeah,
And
and that I love that because it's it's again, it's a mindset, it's a frame of mind that keeps you fresh, it keeps you growing. I think that we're made to grow, right? That is how we are created. And you just if you keep going and you keep moving and you keep that, like you did, momentum looking forward, then there's always a new adventure.
exactly, yeah.
And I mean, what are we here for? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, I get that there are higher planes and bigger purposes in life, but looking forward is what allows you to understand what that purpose is. And you've contributed a lot, I feel like, and have overcome so much that I think it's such an amazing example for people to look to. All right, so Chris and Amy both came up. I don't know who came up first, to be honest with you, but Chris, you want to unmic and say hi? Do you have questions? Do you have just a comment? I know you'll have a joke.
Well, I'd like to say Amy gets to.
Okay, sure. Amy, you want to unmic and have anything to say? She texted me in the background and she was like, "I don't know what to say. I don't have questions. This is just so cool." So,
Um, yeah, hi. How are you?
hi. How are you?
Um, yeah, I was just talking about this whole mindset thing recently, because I think it's an amazing thing, which you tell yourself your brain starts working on and it starts working a solution for it. And I'm like a brain geek. I like to just read and read and read about how our brains work to make things happen. But your example is amazing for me. So I'm just appreciative that you got on here and shared, and I'm just happy to be here.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for
Thanks
coming
for
up.
being here, Amy. Good luck with the house.
Thanks. I'm really
Yeah,
excited. It just got framed
they
today.
just started. Yeah. Is the
So
whole
we
framing
have
done? All of it?
no, we have part of it on the outside skirts of it, and then so we have a slab and like the outside, and then the inside, I guess, will be done tomorrow.
Cool. I'm excited because I'm getting the
Exciting.
guest room. All right, Chris, come on.
You know, teacher says every time a bell rings, Chris Rossetti gets to speak.
Yay!
I heard a bell. I heard a bell.
I
There was a
know.
bell coming from my side, yeah.
So, Peter, this has been very inspirational. I want to thank you so much. Very incredible. And Deanna, thank you too for this great broadcast today.
Thanks.
Peter, I went back to community college at 64 years old, so I too believe that the best is yet to come. Just wait and see. And I have a mobility scooter so I can get around those streets of San Francisco. But anyway, I found when I went back to school, everybody was very accommodating to me on my little old man scooter. And I love the fact that nowadays there are so many opportunities. There's a DSPS program on our campus here in San Francisco, and they make accommodations and they really try to help out everybody at all levels of ability. But when you were going through this, man, you were forging ahead. I mean, driving across the country. And good grief, man. Congratulations. You're a pioneer. You're a trailblazer.
Thanks, man. I'll
Yeah.
take it.
For sure. Because I mean, like, I don't know. That's a pretty. I've driven from California to New Orleans. I'm in New Orleans. It's a really long drive. So yeah.
I actually do remember at my community college back then, and when I came back in 1988, I did my freshman year in 86, was off in 87, came back in 88. There were no automatic doors. Like that wasn't a given. So their first attempt, because I was like pretty well known on campus, before my injury, not to toot my own horn or anything, but so when I came back to college, it was kind of a big deal. And so they put in these doors that were like these lightweight doors that once you started opening them, they were really light. But for me, it didn't help because at the time, now I could kind of do it, but back then I couldn't like reach a door and wheel backwards as it opened. But that was kind of like the first attempt. But then a couple of years later, after I was long gone, they did put in automatic doors. Like now at colleges, I think like that's like a given. But yeah, back then it was like they just had doors,
Yeah.
Also, can I ask you a question related to the job you held for a while in the movie industry there?
Yeah.
My wife is of that particular personality where she can spot flaws. I mean that in a good way. We were on a movie set. I used to work for a small independent film company, and we were on a movie set filming. And so one day I said, "Come on the set and just watch him film a scene or two." And she said, "Okay." And she was standing behind the director's chair and she was watching the monitor. And when it was done, the scene, she said, "What's that dot?" And they said, "What dot?" And she said, "That dot on the screen." And they looked, anyway, long story short, they thought it was a blown pixel on the monitor. Turned out to be a blown pixel in the camera. And if she had not spotted that dot, they would have filmed this project and then perhaps got to the 35 millimeter size of the screen and blown it up on the theater, and it would have been a 4-foot dot, whatever. Anyway, and she's very good on continuity. She drives me crazy. I can't watch TV or anything with this woman. 35 years we've been married, and she goes, "Oh, that's unbelievable. Look at her hair. It's on the other side of her ear." And I'm like, "Will you stop it?" And she loves story continuity and things like that. What would you recommend to people trying to break into the business today in continuity or script?
Well, your wife would be tailor-made to be a script supervisor. So basically, the script supervisor's job on set is that's a person like that's sitting there with the script next to the director, and all they are watching, well, they're watching a lot of things, but their main job is continuity, because the director might shoot the scene 20 takes, and then he might do 20 singles to each actor, and the script supervisor needs to say, like, yeah, the hair, she had hair over her ear. She's got to get the hair back over her ear for continuity. Or wait, the coffee cup was at his lips during that line. So if you want continuity, he's got to put the coffee cup to his lips during that line. But they also, like, their notes are important for the editor, because they'll say, in their script notes, they'll say, "We did scene 1 from this line to this line, and the director loved take 38. So like your wife or anyone who has your wife's, talent for continuity, and when they watch movies or TV shows, would be ideal script supervisors.
Well, thank you so much. And final question, may I ask one more, Deanna?
Yeah,
Go for it.
Speaking of independent films and horror movies, I had the great pleasure and honor of meeting Russ Doughton. Do you ever remember hearing about Russ Doughton?
I'm not sure. Who is he?
He made several Christian cult classics about the end times, and he also made a little movie called The Blob, starring Steve McQueen.
Amazing.
Yeah, we had a film festival. I was helping to run a film festival here in San Francisco years ago, and he came out to receive an award we gave him. And what a great guy. But I was wondering, where can we find some of these other films that you've produced? Is there an IMDb, I'm assuming, of your page?
Yeah. Just look me up on IMDb and see a plethora of little straight to DVD things, and maybe some independent films that never saw the light of day.
Well, I definitely will. And I've been on camera, on the other side of camera. I used to do some casting directing, but I've been on the other side of camera, and I played Nero once, and they actually tried to film me as Nero singing a Madonna song. And I hope that never, ever, ever sees the light of day. Thank you so much for your time, everybody.
I'd love to see it, though. You have such dulcet tones to your voice, Chris. You're like tailor-made for the radio.
Well, and a good face for radio, too. Thank you.
I know his voice every time he gets on here is very soothing. He's got a great voice. And everybody asks him all the time, "What's your mic? What mic do you use? It's amazing." He's like, "Well, I just use my iPhone. There is no mic." It's just all Chris. So I love it. And Chris,
one other thing in my life that I remember that for some crazy reason I took inspiration from. Remember the sketch TV show Mad TV?
uh-huh.
Well, one episode, Bob Newhart was a guest in one of the sketches, playing a psychologist. And the woman, Mo Collins, comes into his office with this like litany of problems and phobias she has. And she's like, "What should I do, doctor?" And Bob Newhart just says, "Stop it." And she's like, "No, I know, but what should I?" He's like, "Stop doing it." And that was the whole sketch, just Bob Newhart saying, "Stop it." And for some reason, I was just like, yeah, exactly. I know that, and I'm not trying to make, people need therapists, everything. But for me, I was just like, yeah, Bob Newhart has it right. When something goes wrong or you're feeling bad, just stop feeling bad. Stop it.
I'm sorry, I had to come back up when you
I know. I saw it. He was like, as
when,
soon as you said it, he
when
was like,
you
I'm coming
mentioned
back up.
when you mentioned that sketch. That's one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah.
Everybody, go look that up. That's your homework. Can I give homework, Deanna, during your broadcast?
Absolutely.
Go look up
Sure.
Bob Newhart in that sketch and just watch him deliver that line. Well, just stop it. And she's like, "Excuse me, stop it." Thank you for bringing that up.
Oh my
Thanks for
God,
knowing
it's
it,
great.
Liz.
Yeah, and you know, so Mel Robbins does that, right? Like everybody thinks this is all new stuff, right? You know, she goes and says, "Oh, here's the 5-second rule. You interrupt the thought, stop it, right? You count backwards so that that thought is not active anymore, and then you take some sort of action to move forward." And here you were in 1980 something, right? Just doing that, just saying, no, stop it, having that conversation with yourself, deciding, taking an action to move forward, making it a point to move forward. And I think that's like a really great summary, to be honest, of all of it. I mean, I don't know. Is it a great summary?
Yeah, no, I think it really is.
Yeah, because you know the when I talk about with people about healing their trauma, or you know what it's like to not feel at home within yourself, and how do you get back to that. The third thing that I talk about is just you need to fix the narrative that's going on in your head. We all have it. It is always there. So be aware of it, and then you choose what the narrative is,
I love it. Yeah.
right? And so you stop it and you choose to move forward. You make the decision. And
Deanna,
Chris,
I'm
yes.
I'm sorry. That works in so good with his story about trying to stop the van. You just have to stop.
Right. You have like, right. There's so many, right. So much
Yeah,
stuff is happening here.
that was definitely a
And,
physical manifestation of that for sure. I just, in my head, it was like, stop thinking that you can't stop your van. Just stop it and stop the van.
stop it and stop it.
Hey, Deanna, I don't know if we have the time, but my good friend Glenn texted that he's watching, I think, from the link and he has a question. If he texts it to me, can I ask it?
Absolutely. Yes, for
So, Glenn, if
sure.
you're still watching, text me the message and I'll communicate it over the air here. Glenn is a
Yeah.
very dear friend from Washington, D.C., a former 30-year district attorney in Washington, D.C.,
Oh,
and now he has a channel on YouTube called Justice Matters. And, we are fighting for justice in America. I'm part of Team Justice. And, he's all about just, we want justice for a lot that has gone on these last few years.
right. I mean, just these past few weeks, if you look at just even things like the mass shootings in Buffalo and
Yeah.
Uvalde, Texas. I mean,
Why
there,
can't we do something about it? It's maddening.
it is maddening. And I keep saying that, you know what? We got to stop relying on the people up here, and we need to start making some movement down here in the grassroots. If we can collectively pull together and decide who we want to be and how we want to be with each other and how we take care of the people in our community, maybe that helps in some way, shape, or form with
Yeah.
these people who are finding themselves so desperate or destitute that this is what they resort to. Yeah, it definitely has to, something has to happen. Something has to happen. I don't know all the solutions,
Here
but
it is.
something has to
Let's see.
happen.
Here's Glenn's question.
Okay.
I'm going to look at it on my computer so I don't leave the screen.
Okay.
How did you find and decide to get involved in Team Justice? Because your contribution to the team has been invaluable, and you make me look smarter and more tech savvy than I am. Ah, shucks, Glenn.
I love it.
Glenn. Um, Well, yeah, and actually, you know what? I'm glad that Glenn asked this question because Justice Matters and Team Justice is actually a big part of my life right now, besides just painting and writing.
Mm.
I actually did a couple of weeks ago to try my hand at stand up comedy, I should say. A friend of mine gave me a 6 week workshop, and I was like, "Yeah, it'd be fun to learn. It'll help my comedy writing." And anyway, so Team Justice, so basically, I watched YouTube a lot. A couple, when you're frustrated by the leadership in your country, you kind of find comfort, I guess, in watching YouTubers that are sharing your frustration. And but I started watching Glenn Kirshner's Justice Matters, and I was like, man, he's saying it. He's got this great knowledge of 30 years of being a district attorney. He says it like it is, and he backs everything up with facts and with knowledge. But and he had just started doing these daily videos, but no offense to his son that put together the intro, but his intro was really not good. It kind of looked like, someone made it on a Commodore VIC computer or something. No offense, Glenn, to your son. I know he did the best he could. But anyway, I reached out to Glenn and
But
was just
then he's got a producer now.
right. I was like, hey, I love what you're doing, and I'm pretty savvy with editing, and I'm not like a graphic designer, but I could do pretty good graphics. I'd like to make an intro for you. And he was like, yeah, I would love that. And so we shot some ideas back and forth, and I created him one. And to this day, now a couple years later, it's still his intro, but it opened up, a relationship and a friendship. And now I edit more videos with him and for him. But to answer his question of why I wanted to get involved in Team Justice was number one, um, I've always felt a passion for justice my whole life. Like I got involved in a lot of death row cases in the past
Mm.
because I just don't believe in the death penalty.
Mm-hmm.
But for Team Justice specifically, I'm not just saying this because Glenn is watching, but his passion and emotion and knowledge was just infectious. And
Mm.
I mean, that's even why I wanted to help him make that intro back then. I was like, I want to be a part of what this guy's doing, and what he's doing really means something because he's standing on a 30-year bedrock of knowledge.
Yeah.
And, and so, and yeah, and he started a Patreon, and now we have Team Justice with people all over the country and the world. We get together every Sunday on Zoom to discuss what's going on with justice. And um, so, really, I would say I got involved because I have a passion for justice, but it was wanting to be a part of Glenn's flavor of justice.
You were inspired and you wanted to become
Yeah,
part of it. I love
yeah,
that. That's awesome. And we need to get Glenn on Fireside. So, because here's the cool thing about Fireside. And I know you're kind of getting your stuff together to do some stuff on Fireside.
yeah.
But the neat thing about Fireside is you get all the assets. So it's not like other platforms. They allow you to just take this and export it out. Like right now, I'm simulcasting to my YouTube channel. And so this is happening on YouTube Live. I know nothing about how to run YouTube, so I probably only have one follower over there because I created a new YouTube channel just for my Laughter After show, and I'm probably my only follower from my other account
Well,
because I
I
don't know
will
what I'm
follow
doing.
you after this.
Okay, but it is up and it's running and it's going over there. So that is something that's kind of cool because you can do that on two devices where you can have live interaction with your audience and yet also have comments and live comments rolling on your YouTube. So I know that's a thing, even though right now I'm paying no attention to what's happening on YouTube.
Mhm.
It is simulcasting over there. Um, so that's a thing. And then also you get um, a complete file that you get to export. So it has separated out audio, just audio. So you can create a podcast, clips,
Oh,
anything
okay.
you need. You can get the audio with the audience reaction or without it. And then you can get the audio and video. There's a whole bunch of things. You can get individual people. There's a lot of things that you get in the export package. And all you have to do when you export it to put it on anything else is just let people know that it was recorded live on Fireside.
Wow.
That's kind of part of your contract with Fireside here. And other than that, your show is your show, and you get to take the assets and do what you want with them.
That's
So I
really
think it's a
amazing.
pretty neat way to have a production studio in your phone.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely want to um, introduce Glenn to that. In fact, I think he will be one of my first, if not my first guest, when I get
Surprise, Glenn.
my show up and rolling. And actually, now it's a good time to announce. Like, hopefully, it'll be ready the second weekend of June at some point
Okay.
on Saturday afternoon. And my show is called All Walks of Life
I
because I
like it.
will be bringing people from all walks of my life, from topics that are that I am passionate about, like film, music, sports, especially Chicago Cubs, donuts, justice, spirituality, cats, people from all those walks of life. And I was thinking about calling it All Walks of Life asterisk, even though I can't walk. That'll be like a little fun sidebar of the show. But yeah,
Right.
so I'm going to have it ready in about 2 weeks. And if he's not the first guest, he'll be one of the first guests, Glenn Kirshner. And yeah, I definitely want to talk to him about creating a fireside. He would be, I mean, he gets like, you know, hundreds of thousands of views on his daily videos. He would be a hit over here.
That would be great. Yeah. But
Deanna,
you got to, yes, go for it, Chris.
sorry to interrupt you, but I went over to YouTube while we were talking and I found you and it's broadcasting loud and clear. And I am your second subscriber. And I might also add that you both look taller over there. So
Oh, good. Thanks. I could always use a little bit of height.
That is great.
Yes. So basically, what I'm doing here on Fireside is I am getting my feet wet. I don't know enough about this to do anything with it, but I'm learning and I would like to be able to, utilize all of what I am getting out of this. So,
can
anyway.
I ask one last question? I
Mhm.
promise. Peter, how
Sure.
can we purchase your artwork? I noticed there was a daffodil painting or something that really caught my eye. How do we purchase your art?
Well, all of the artwork you see on my website right now, there are three of the paintings that are in people's hands, but the rest of them are in my possession. My deal with MFPA is that I get 3 year contracts with them. That just one just got renewed in January for 3 years. They own the images of my art for perpetuity because they're basically paying me once a month. They pay me. I get money wired from their home office in Switzerland every month to be a mouth painter for them. So they own all my images. However, every 3 years they ship me back my paintings that I've done during that 3 year period. And I own the physical artwork and I can indeed sell the physical artwork. And so you ask a good question, Chris. I haven't decided um, when I do want my artwork to get out there to people. So maybe I'll put an earmark that the daisies turned you on. And when I get ready to do that, I will reach out to you.
Well, thank
And thank
I
you.
love it.
That's like one of my favorites too. I actually was trying a whole new style with that one and I really liked it.
Yeah, and if you guys are curious, his website is in the fortune cookie. You guys can go check it out. So I didn't realize what the mouth painting official thing was. So you do it, and somebody else has that, and they're just paying you to do
Yeah,
the
like so
paintings.
the MFPA, they're a big worldwide company. They're a publishing house, they're not a charity,
Okay.
and they only employ people that can with disabilities that can only paint with their feet or their mouth. And they have
Amazing.
offices in like USA, like China, Mexico, I think maybe Russia,
Hmm.
Japan, Tokyo, that's Japan, Taiwan. Anyway, they have offices all over the world and artists from all over the world. And they basically have like about, I think like about 800 artists worldwide or so. So it's actually, and they only take in a few new people a year. So it's not easy to get in. I feel so fortunate that back in 2015 when I applied, I got in right away. And I think it's
Awesome.
because I even told them in my application, I was like, listen, if you're looking for an artist that's going to do like still life or portraits or landscapes, I'm not your guy. Like, my style is very like cartoony, and like I'm inspired by Roy Lichtenstein and Andy Warhol.
Right.
And
I was going to say, yeah, that's what it reminded me of when I looked at it, like Liechtenstein, you
and so
know.
I think that they liked the fact of having like someone that was, and their big businesses like Christmas cards and calendars, and that's where they make all their money is like Christmas season and spring season. So they do like you to paint Christmas motifs and spring motifs, but you could paint anything your heart desires. They don't limit you, but it's good to paint those things if you want a shot for your painting to end up on a card or a calendar. Which I haven't
Okay.
in 6 years I've been with them. I haven't landed on a card or a calendar yet, but I have had five of my paintings licensed by. They don't tell you which office licensed it, but it's kind of a big deal. Like if you think about it, 800 painters turning in at least five paintings a year. That's what 4,000 paintings a year, and they only license like about 200 to 300 paintings a year. So, but then they only publish like less than that. So even just to get licensed is pretty cool.
That is neat. That is really cool.
And they commissioned me to do a children's book, which I wrote and illustrated a whole children's book, and they just commissioned me to do a second one.
Oh my, that's really good. I love that.
So I'm
Yeah, and I
just
can see where some of those paintings appeal to kids too. Like you can put it into a kid format. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Did I interrupt you? Were you getting ready to say something?
Oh yeah, no, I was just saying no. I'm enjoying the journey of starting the first children's book was based on this my cat Muffin. I started painting her and putting her in a couple of Christmas settings, and they loved it so much. Like, can you make a children's book with Muffin? So it was
Oh,
called Muffin's Fun and Curious Christmas, and there's a link on my website where you can go to MFPA and buy it. But now
oh,
the second
cute.
one's going to be I'm introducing a little character of a baby duck named Mac the duck, and it's Muffin and Mac. Uh, what I've traveled the world. I forget the official
Yeah.
title, but so it's basically Muffin showing Mac all the big landmarks of the world.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome.
And it's
Well, I'm
meant
gonna
for
go
like
check this out too.
toddlers or parents to read to their little kids and stuff like that.
Yeah, I love that. I love getting my kids books. So, how do we get signed copies?
Yeah, just reach out to me. I would like happily sign a copy and send it to whoever wanted one.
All right, cool. All right, well, y'all heard it here.
Yeah, and I mean, fine. You got my website there now, which actually I haven't. I do have Peter at petersoby.com is my Gmail there, but it's not set up yet. But all my socials are on my website, so you can always reach out to me at Instagram or Facebook or Twitter.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. I am so glad that we did this. Is there any last thoughts from the people here up on stage? Is there anybody in the audience that might have any questions? I saw that Monica and Maishola joined. So thanks for being here with us. Um, if anybody has any last thoughts before we kind of wrap up here.
Yes, in the immortal words of Chicago Cubs announcer Harry Carey, let's go Cubs!
Let's get some
And
runs.
there's the bell. I love it. It just, that timing was perfect. Okay. Are you
Chris,
getting more messages from Glenn?
I feel like Chris is like my spirit brother or something like that.
Outright?
Holy
Yeah,
cow!
You guys have to connect off of here.
definitely.
um, all right. Well, if that's everything, I want to thank you so much, Peter, for coming here, doing the show with me. I like to tell my guests that I see you and you're beautiful. I love seeing people's journeys and I love seeing how they work through their journeys. I love seeing the fact that you are living proof that we are all magic and we have everything we need inside of us to heal, to succeed, and whatever else we want to do. So,
Those are beautiful words. Thank you so much, Deanna. And
yeah, you're
thank you for
welcome.
having this platform for myself and for other people to share inspiring stories. And sometimes it feels kind of like, oh, I'm just yapping about, my life. But, I did come to the point too where I acknowledge that it's kind of like my job to inspire people in the position I'm in. It's and so I'm grateful to have a platform like this and people like yourself that offer me time and space to share my story and hopefully inspire even just one person out there.
Yeah. And Amy, you wanted to say something? I'm
Yeah, I
sorry.
was just going to say that, yeah, never know who's listening and who's down in the dumps and not knowing a way out. And to see somebody else succeeding that may be in the same or similar situation, I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. I feel too, especially for quadriplegics out there, like when you're first injured and you're almost most likely a teenager, and it's just kind of like, oh my God, is my life over? It's like I'm 34 years post injury now. So, and like I said, I'm still looking forward to what's coming up in 5 years. And I'm hoping that's the way it's always going to be. So, thank you.
Yeah. Well, it's always going to be that because you have those little dueling banjos in your head that say, "Yes, this is how it's going to be."
I like that. Doing banjos. Yep.
There you go. I wanted to mention that I have a couple of shows already scheduled up into June, and I'm going to just mention those very quickly. Um, I have Natalie, who's here on the platform. She was here for a little bit. To all the men I've tolerated before, she's hilarious. She has a great story, so we're going to hear from her next week. And then the following week, I have a guest who wrote the book The Emancipation of Evan Walls. So if you guys want to do a little research, his name is Jeffrey Blunt. He actually was I don't know if I don't know if he was a producer or a director because I'm not sure of really all of what the differences are, but of Meet the Press. He was behind that for many, many
Mhm.
years. And then he started to write. He has 3 books out. This is his most recent one, but this is his baby because really ultimately the character Evan in this book is based on his story or how he felt growing up. And so it's June 14th. I'm doing it ahead of Juneteenth, right? Which is about emancipation. And I'm doing it because I want to highlight generational trauma and maybe get people to stop saying, "Why aren't you over this? Slavery was 1865." No, that's not true. And when we think about segregation, literally desegregation somewhere in the 60s, I don't know the exact date, but that's not that long ago. Okay. I was born in 68. My mother never went to school with anyone other than white people, any other ethnicity. All the way through college, she did a semester of college. Never. So don't act like it's that far ago, and people dismiss it. So I want to have a conversation, but I want to have an educated conversation because just in case y'all haven't noticed, I am not African American. I want to be able to bring that to the table, though, but to be able to show, hey, we can open up a conversation about this and talk about it. And he was super happy to be able to talk about that generational trauma and how that played into the way he wrote The Emancipation of Evan Walls. So, you guys go get the book. It was an excellent book. I read it in just a few days. It was really, really good. It is fiction novel, but it's based on his story. And when you know that, it really kind of makes you look at it like, huh, okay. So, um, yeah, so it's in the middle of it, and it is based in the middle of the civil rights movement. That's the setting. So that's pretty cool. So, welcome you all back for conversations with him in a couple weeks and with Natalie next week. And who knows who I'm having after that because I haven't gotten on top of my scheduling as good as I was for May. I was really good about it in May. But I am super glad that we connected, Peter. I want to again thank you so much for being here.
Same here.
And yeah, until next time, I think, shine on, folks. And we'll see you back on live on Fireside. I feel like I got to get that in there just to make sure it's
Sounds
in there
good.
somewhere. All right. I am going to play you guys out. I'm going to play my husband's music instead of Waitbot. We can listen to it for a couple seconds. You guys can hang as long as you feel like. And I'm going to take me off of camera? Do you want me to pull you down off of camera?
Sure, yeah. Thank you
All
again.
right.
It's been
All
awesome.
right. Thank you. All right. And we'll see you guys again next week. I think I'm going to play you out if I know how to find the volume button.
I'm just pretending to be still.
You're funny.
Frozen?
Huh?
Like people might wonder, is his screen frozen?
Well, as I'm driving around,
There we go. I was like, what?
I don't know how to leave this clap on.
That little hamburger at the bottom left.
In anthropology. So all this time that I drive my notebook beside, jot down the things I see and objectively try to convey this array, this mobile ballet of profanity. I know it's safer in my car. I know these people are specimens in jars put on display, observed in various parts, distinctively modified to suit their needs and amenities, initiated debate to procreate, although unnaturally. I know it's safer in my car with lunatics at large. They broke their petri jar